Jacksonville, the child was born who couldn't sit still. 86 years later with no regret. You know that man can't sit still yet. The Great Depression couldn't get him down. He worked for his dad's store in town, collecting money in small amounts. Poor whites and blacks in their furniture accounts. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. As he'd collect, he'd talk to folks. He'd hear legends, tales, songs, and jokes. Now this fine treasure he'd record and write. He was colorblind, didn't see black and white. Writer's project for the WPA. Zora Neale Hurston, he earned his pay. Crackers and blacks, they talk for hours. It was a barefoot history, this land of flowers.
On October the 6th, 2019, the week that was, coming to you from the Boston Red Network and WBRN Radio, as we normally do, a summary of the week's activities and a look at perhaps some things that will come up next week at the same time. We have political commentary, usually from a number of people. Of course, this week, as usual, Uncle Carl Rove, we have something from him. And we have sort of a dialogue, tit for tit, I was going to say tit for tat, but nonetheless, from the Nate Silver website. It's a dialogue there that they've turned into a podcast. We would have played the podcast, however, I guess we'll just read some of the dialogue between Nate Silver and various people that work there on impeachment. Karl Rove is also writing on impeachment, as many people are. I was talking to a right-winger tonight, and his summary is basically he's a Fox News person. Spends probably 10 or 12 hours a day looking into Fox News or at Fox News, or what do you want to call it. And from Hannity on, Ingram, the various commentators that are there. And basically I would call it consensus agreement of those people. At least I've mentioned that the impeachment process, or actually we are not actually to impeachment. We're doing an investigative. I say we, the Congress and the American people, are being treated to an investigation of charges that will eventually be turned into articles of impeachment. What the problem is here, and we at this mic have talked about this for a very long time, is timing. What is happening now, and I just came today, some additional problems that are there. Time has always been a problem. You have a national election in 2020. When the last impeachment was William Jefferson Clinton, his impeachment was before an election year, and then there was a year, there was several months between that and a year later that the campaign began in earnest. But unfortunately, in this particular impeachment cycle, 2020 campaign will begin in Iowa, and it's February. Very short time. We're in October now, November, December, and January, that people sober up from a New Year's Day, and then all of a sudden we're going into Iowa. The campaign is hot and heavy. Debates, of course, going on this month. DJ Trump is on the road again to the upper Midwest state of Minnesota on Thursday. He was in a place called a Village in Florida, talking about Medicare, but he really didn't have very much to say about it. So we have these kind of interludes, but on the impeachment calendar, at least the investigative part of its calendar, the holidays. And the way the commercial enterprises, the Walmarts, etc. of the world, set it up now. You have Halloween the end of this month, and the holiday shopping season all enrolled into one. Well, when you start rolling those people in, those particular dates in, then you start to have a problem about people's attentiveness to the impeachment process. And we've been looking at some polling there, and it's not something that people are that attentive to. I'm not sure we'll include Mr. Cook in this. I think we will. Go ahead and put Charlie Cook in here, and Charlie Cook and his people, Amy Walter, etc., are talking also about impeachment. And back to this timing matter, it couldn't be worse, because people now, and the majority of people, are not tuned in on it. And at the same time, we have a situation where people, particularly Thanksgiving Day, the most highly traveled day for people, it's a family day. That families get together. Sometimes people travel long distance, sometimes not. And then you get into the other holiday, the Christmas season, Saint Nick, and etc. And of course, in October, I don't want to forget anything. Yom Kippur is coming up here very, very shortly. Wish everyone a happy Yom Kippur. But a Jewish holiday. Anyway, we have a lot of holiday seasons and celebrations coming up, and just the whole idea of holiday time, shopping, etc. For us atheists of the world out there, we don't shop, but the whole point is it's supposed to be a merry, merry holiday. And I've been out before canvassing during the old St. Nick's holiday there, and people were a bit more happy, optimistic, even in times of economic peril. Of course, obviously, if you've just been laid off the week before St. Nick comes down the chimney, old St. Nick would be blocked. But this is part of the problem that you face. You got holidays, then all of a sudden you got the primary season, and as a matter of the media, if now you have the tit for tete-a-tete is what I wanted to say, tete-a-tete operation going on here. A little more sophisticated way of saying it. You are stuck with the Democratic candidates that are in this still crowded field, want to get on the air once in a while, on cable, etc., etc. Well, this impeachment thing is shutting them out, and there's not really a lot of news there of the person in charge, intelligence community that forwarded the complaint in the first place. The whistleblower said it was credible, came out with, it went to testify, came out with some emails, but virtually said nothing. But it took up some airwave space then, and of course you have DJ Trump now trying to expand the whole spectra of this Get Biden campaign to China, and then proclaiming that as president he's supposed to be fighting corruption. I'm assuming he's talking about he should be fighting corruption worldwide. If there's an American consul, the embassy, whatever, there in that particular country, I suppose if it involves any political candidate, he could get in the fray. And then he went on to say, well, it's not about politics. Well, as LBJ would say, the hell, it's not about politics. It's all about politics. There was no politics going on, contest with the Democrats. There'd be no Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden would be at home, to paraphrase DJ Trump, sleeping. he would indeed be Sleepy Joe. But the whole point, whether or not he's Sleepy Joe or not, he's elevated him up, and we'll talk about the plus. And it's a dialectic process. There are plus and some minus there. But Joe Biden's big problem is, I don't want to take the fire out of Amy Waller here, but the polls were starting to go south on Joe Biden before this came out, and people will take a second look. And we had a big disappointment, medical disappointment this week. Bernie Sanders had a heart attack, and they were able to get him to a hospital and transport him. It appears a different one there in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'll have to check in with Jim on this. That lives there in Las Vegas, actually Henderson, but nonetheless, we had a local news, and I hadn't looked at that. We'll get that for the Monday morning quarterback. And they immediately, early morning, they always like to do early morning surgeries, put in 2 stents. But through the examinations they gave, especially echocardiograms, I've had these before, and he didn't find a heart attack. But anyway, they determined that he did, in fact, have a heart attack. Probably my experience with cardiologists, having a blockage myself, several. Anyway, what cardiologists and the way that they talk is different. Probably, I'm assuming Bernie Sanders had what they call a mild heart attack, which is, I won't say almost not a heart attack, but you know what it is. And because of the amount of stents placed in there, it appears not to be any wide range, or as they call it, severe arterial cirrhosis going on there. But because of this cardiac infraction here, I ran into people in the course of my visiting various cardiologists and taking tests that have had 2, 3, or 4 heart attacks, and stents were put in there, and that was it. And whereas other people have had what they call open heart surgery, where there are no stents involved, but they actually go in and replace the vessels that have blockages or bypass them, is basically what they're doing, and using material from probably your leg. They checked my left leg out. But anyway, that is one of the ways that they do it, and the prospect on that is usually good, and 10, 15 years the most. That's for bypass surgery. The stents, it depends, on those. They can get old, they can get leaky, and they'll have to go back in and revisit the case, put in new stents. But that's usually after 10 years or so there, and that's not as much. But Bernie is 78 now, so you give him a 10, 15-year prospect, he would be in his 90s, along with Jimmy Carter, and happy birthday to him last Saturday. He's 95. But he says Joe Biden is actually too old to be president, and old Joe is 76. Well, we got all these people in their 70s. Here, Liz Warren, didn't know she was 70. She's 70. And then I guess who gets the next prize? DJ Trump, he sits in 73. Then Lunchbox Joe at 76. And Bernie at 78. Is there a lot of difference between the... Well, it would depend, obviously, on your physical condition. You would expect the candidate for stents would be DJ Trump at any time. But we don't know about it. We know he has high cholesterol, higher than Bernie had. But Bernie had gout. No, DJ doesn't have gout. So in other words, we could start... That'll be the next debate, who is the most healthy. If we see DJ Trump run on stage, then we'll know something is strangely going on. Whereas Elizabeth Warren jogs on stage all the time. She's a small person, and she'll be jumping up down with a jump rope. They have something like that. But getting ahead to setting aside the comedy, just from being out there on the campaign trail with these candidates day to day, you don't have the schedule. Obviously, you're not getting up at 5 to get to something at 8 in the morning and finish that one up. And you're eating on the bus or wherever you are. And then you've got something for noon. You could have 3 or 4 events a day. and then you leave in Iowa on your way to New Hampshire, some more events. I mean, this is a day after day grueling thing. It can be hard on a young man. I remember following George McGovern around. It was hard back in those days, and I was in my 20s. But with Barack Obama starting out there, this is in 2008. Obviously, I was younger. And, not following him continuously during the entire year, but, through Iowa and some of the other stops there, it was a little bit different type of experience, no doubt about it. And if you're just out to say canvassing, I'm not walking around for a candidate, you've got to make those doors. I mean, you have to, knock several hundred doors to find anybody home, spend 5 or 10 minutes with them, and move on to the next person. So it's not easy. In other words, that part of it is not easy. They call it retail politics, period. Now, it's easier if you're 50 years old or around that, like Senator Booker of New Jersey, for instance. And even Amy Klobuchar, and I didn't know that. We encountered her 20 years ago. She's 60. I thought she was probably just in her 50s. But anyway, she's, moving around there. And then you've got a Kamala Harris, she's in her early 50s. She's moving around there. But Beto O'Rourke literally is running around out there for a guy, what is he, 6'6"? Anyway, whatever he is, that could dunk the basketball, run off the court. Yeah, he's energetic, there's no doubt about it. He's in his 40s. So you have those out there in a field that's an older field. Well, what'll happen in 2024? Well, most of these characters now in their 70s won't be in 2024. Well, who will be next? Will Amy run again? I don't know. Amy may be in the White House. They're in the vice presidential chair. Any of these characters could. So we're going to see some shake-up there. And let's throw a little international news in. We're going to bring back next year, maybe less this year, BR on the world. That's the international affairs. But we used to have a little 10 or 15 minute summary virtually every day. We'll start doing some of that in Hong Kong, which is part of China. They're having demonstrations there. The subway system and the metro is closed down and maybe partially up to date, meaning the demonstrations are effective. And there you have a situation of all politics are local. The demonstrations have moved from just a change of a law, extradition law, that would send one across the river to the mainland to stand criminal charges, to economic conditions in Hong Kong. And if you look at a little bit of the history of Hong Kong, it was always an exception to the case. It was always a place where the rich, the banking interests were, trading companies, etc. But now that's become on steroids. It's not a very large island to begin with. So the cost of housing is in Las Vegas, Nevada, or in Seattle, Washington, it went through the roof. More so. So the upper middle class, or the bourgeoisie, or whatever you want to call them, have won out there, and they have literally locked people out, young people. So some of these demonstrations about that, and the government has not had a sustainable housing program. You cannot do that in a place where there's a limited supply on land to begin with. And general economic slowdown, and in terms of universities, etc., that people go to, all the same things that you see in Seattle or in Hong Kong, but they're exaggerated. But the people of Hong Kong are coming out, and the newest decree by old Carrie Lam, well, you can't wear your mask. Nonetheless, they came out in such great numbers. With or without masks, they were out there. They weren't out today in any great numbers because of the metro being down, but the metro will be back up, and they'll go to the general strike, which the general strike can be very effective if you have the numbers, even if it's only a one-day affair, a few hours affair. And that has the municipality of Hong Kong has lost millions of dollars, and I would assume more of a billion of yuan in Chinese currency there. And some of the big-time capitalists are getting nervous. And they also do tourism there. And obviously if people are running around, and some parts of the demonstrators were literally knocking out the entranceways, transit places there, and various other things. So the tourists aren't going to come. So in other words, this hurts the business community, and the business community, of course, is trying to group together now. But the big situation is, can they get more numbers out there than the people that are out there? When you get 1 million people out, you really reached a critical mass. Then we go to Iran. Iran's having their problems based upon bad economics there. Since Saddam has left, they've had problems, and they have more problems. And 100 people there have been killed. So you're seeing this in various countries. Portugal's having an election today. There on the government that is trying to remain in office, that has been working on the austerity by various big lending countries. So we see situations all around, even in Bolivia under progressive President Evo Morales, and what's happening there on some environmental things. We are looking to see more about that. But nonetheless, let's get to Uncle Carl now that we've covered some of the anecdotal stuff here and some of the facts here. And see, Uncle Carl is writing in the Wall Street Journal on the 3rd of October, hurry up and impeach. It's been 10 days since Nancy Pelosi declared that the House was moving towards an official impeachment inquiry. Now, the word here is inquiry of DJ Trump. The Democrats are already blowing, according to Uncle Carl. They are moving much too quickly. Democrats tossed around the word urgent as if as the speed is the primary imperative, more important than finding quote unquote the truth. Be very careful about using the word truth and not facts. And following procedure. Well, procedure for impeachment, there really is no set procedure, and I don't know if Uncle Carl is talking about civil procedure here or not. After expanding that event, accelerated the pace from the beginning. Impeachment, Pelosi told reporters, we have to strike while the iron is hot. Repeating the phrase for emphasis, that means the House Democrats will likely hold hearings for a few weeks once they return. I forgot about the mid-October break. The late great Jerry Pippen used to talk about all these breaks. They only work basically a 4-day work week anyway in mid-October, and aim for a floor vote on the articles by the end of the year. Well, if you come back mid-October, you've also got the Thanksgiving break coming up there. And so to get the end of the year, and then you've got the Santa break in December. So you got a lot of breaks built in here. The Democrats' need for speed is already resolved in on fairness, according to Uncle Carl. Considers Friday's demand by the 3 committees, Representative Cummings, Representative Engel, and Adam Schiff. That the Secretary Pompeo provide documents and depositions from 5 State Department officials starting on the 2nd. Well, okay, they should have already started. Pompeo pushed back, arguing that 2 business days wasn't enough time for those called to consult private and departmental lawyers and prepare to answer questions on the oath, let alone for the State Department to review the requested documents and decide whether they are privileged. Now, that's the difference between privileged or classified, or whether to cooperate at all. Well, if you don't cooperate at all, then they just go to court. In response, the chair threatened Pompeo, saying a delay is illegal and would constitute evidence of obstruction of the impeachment process. That is up to Chairman Schiff. They're bluffing, but this is how they operate. Verdict first, trial later, breaking the rules, ignoring due process, and fairness be damned. In general, rules on the production of evidence, it just would depend. It could be 5 days or it could be 30 days. Of course, you can ask for an extension if you can't produce the evidence. And generally speaking, this is in civil. Sometimes in criminal. You'd be granted more than that. You'd be granted a second extension. It would depend, obviously, on the process, the judge, and what type of action it is. Now, if it's an extraordinary action, that's a stay or injunctive type action, those emergency actions, you would probably be talking about 3 to 5 days. Anyway, the impeachment process begins not with the House voting to authorize an inquiry, as has been done previously, but with the Speaker simply declaring it is on the way. This denies the opposition the right to certain protections and procedures, such as guaranteeing the ability to call witnesses and requiring committee votes on important matters. It means Speaker Pelosi, Leader Pelosi, could give 6 Democratic chairs a piece of the inquiry rather than lodging it with Judiciary Chair Nadler. Well, that's up to her. In the previous one, in the 70s, they had a joint committee. Anyway, get to a little bit of this. Okay. The New York Democrat has proven a lousy public face for his party, as well as an incompetent director of the impeachment orchestra. Boy, he's really going there. Pelosi should be dubbed Czar Nancy the Great for protecting her caucus and vulnerable members from tough votes on launching an impeachment investigation by simply granting herself the power to authorize the process. She hopes to minimize the fallout from red districts. Well, very wise politicking there. While still sending the Senate a resolution demanding the removal of the president she detests. Good luck with that. And if this is all they've got, 2/3 of the Senate are not going along. He used 8, and that's just too much for me, so we need to be the grammar coach here. Anyway, the rhetoric. And I spoke last night about over an hour with a professor that teaches, of all things, rhetoric. Very good, very knowledgeable professor. Anyway, the House Democrats have made their appeal inept, and the appearances aren't always deceiving. Consider he's got the Mr. Schaaf there, stunning the opening Intelligence Committee hearing on Trump's conversation with the President of Ukraine. Schaaf channeled his inner Martin Scorsese to revise the calls, transcript, and added new words to make it sound like a scene out of Goodfellas. He read his treatment to a national cable audience, only later admitting it was a parody. Yeah, I suppose he's into parodies too. He wasn't in the house when he did. He was on TV. But it was foolish. Anyway, the financial chair, I know he get to Auntie Waters, tweeted that the impeachment is not good enough for Trump. He needs to be in prison and placed in solitary confinement. Well, Trump's got on Auntie's case there, and Auntie don't take anything. She's in South Central. That last part sure is a nice touch. Thus, all this zeal is unlikely to convince the American people of its right to overturn the last presidential election, preempt the next one, only a year away by evicting the occupant of the White House. Even Uncle Carl can't afford to mention his name, and we've spent more time on this than we actually wanted to do. We had a lot of economic news coming out, incidentally, from the Institute for Supply Management. They finally came out. We'll have that on the Numbers Man show here on WBRN Radio and the Boston Red Network channels, including iHeart, YouTube, Stitcher, Spreaker, Google Podcasts. Incidentally, on Google Podcasts, more people need to check out our podcast over at Google Podcasts. We need to go and look and see what's going on at Google Podcasts. Very interesting situation there. And we're on Facebook, and we're making some changes in terms of descriptions. That'll go on this month and next month, which will make it easier there, improve the sound quality. I mean, we're doing a lot of things here, trying to get things at a better intercept, so to speak, here. And I don't know, we'll have an open source report soon here or not. We're trying to figure it out. We do have a report we've been working on, and we'll get that out on the Dallas trial down there. It is over now. And the Amber guy got 10 years, and we'll talk a little about that. We have most of it already to bring that one out there. We have a Boris Johnson special. We'll get that straight on Brexit. Brexit goes on and on. With people that haven't been looking at it lately, Johnson has submitted some new proposals, and we'll see where that goes. He's promised they will leave the EU at the end of this month, and that's coming up very, very quickly. We'll be talking about that. And Bernie Sanders, talk a little about this from the LA Times, a subject that we have an interest in. This is the LA Times here, and we're dealing with blockages also. This is on October the 4th, and this is by Matt Pierce. Anyway, Bernie Sanders suffered a heart attack this week, his presidential campaign, and this was just disclosed on a Friday. He was discharged from the medical center in Las Vegas. Disclosure, which came 2.5 days after was first hospitalized. Well, sometimes, and I'm not sure on that, sometimes they do have to look at the test, and it takes a while to scrutinize all that through echocardiogram, as we talked about in our introduction period. Is likely to bring further scrutiny of the 78-year-old's health as he seeks to resume campaigning to become the oldest president. Well, and so it goes. Has been treated after experiencing chest pains at a campaign event. Doctors placed 2 stents in his heart to correct the blocked coronary artery. Well, actually, according to the doctors also here, thanking the nurses, etc. here. Ian from the doctor after presenting an outside facility to an outside facility with chest pain, Sanders was diagnosed with myocardial infraction. We talked about that. That's a statement from the doctors, Antonio Machad Jr. and Dr. Juan Garaji. Anyway, he was immediately transferred. Now, he was transferred from wherever he went to the Desert Springs Hospital Medical Center. The center was stable upon arrival, and I'm not sure if this is, and was taken to the cardiac catheterization lab, at which time 2 stents. I've been to one of those before, so we can tell you a little bit about those stents were applied. The hospital's course was uneventful with good expected progress. He was discharged, instruction to follow up with his personal position. My advice to Senator Sanders is follow up with another cardiologist. Anyway, about 15% sufferers never reach the hospital, but the prognosis is good for survivors who receive quick treatment. Well, that's if people have a massive heart attack. They do reach the hospital, but they're dead upon arrival of this shortly. Survival rates and treatment have increased in recent decades, no doubt about that. Even in Ike's era, of course they didn't have any treatments, but they were pretty good. Leaving the hospital with limited heart damage, that's according to a summary from the Harvard Medical School. They seem to know lots about this. Mass General in particular. Patients are usually put on medication, including aspirin, urged to rest while the body recovers. No doubt about that. That is according to Helger von Herler, assistant professor of cardiology at the USC Medical School. Van Hurley said it's common for heart attack sufferers to return to work in good health. I'm sure there's going to be lots of concern and conjecture about what this means, but it's a common occurrence in Western societies, and a lot of people do quite well after a heart attack if they notice the symptoms soon and get treatment quickly. As Van Hurley said, this will likely not be the last time that a candidate's health comes up. No doubt about that. And they named the same people there that came up before. But again, they point out here, Bernie faces more challenges there. Aren't about his health. They're about whether he has lost his appeal amongst. He hasn't lost his appeal amongst progressives. The appeal has been the liberal side of his coalition. He's been losing some of those people, and we have to tell it as it is Howard Cosell would say. And, of course, people that voted for Hillary the Monster Clinton, they would be in line to go. Just looking at the globe here, Bernie leaves hospital early in the week. Hackers have attacked the Trump campaign, according to this release out here. Microsoft said hackers attempted to penetrate 241 accounts, but did not identify the targets. 4 accounts were compromised, according to Microsoft, and one of those evidently was the Trump campaign. So everybody has their mind on the Trump campaign. Democrats subpoenaed the White House. This is a big headline of Washington Post. This is a Globe here. Of course, they're owned by the same people, and so they go. All right. Let's quickly loom through this. Last week was a big deal as Joe Biden was able to clean the language up a little. The group that challenged the at Harvard University admission process, appealing a federal judge ruled that the Ivy League school did not discriminate against Asian Americans. Students for fair admissions is appealing the U.S. To the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit that's located in Boston. Ed Bloom, he's a character that was in the Texas case. President of the group said students for fair admissions, boy, a hell of a name for a front group. Probably should change their name to Students Against Fair Admission, make an appeal. You file a notice of appeal there. That's, it's not pro forma, but it does happen, especially particularly if you have the money. William Lee, an attorney for Wilmer Hale, who represented the Harvard case and also a member of the university's governing board, said the school would vigorously defend the court's decision. The court ruled that Harvard did not discriminate on the basis of race in its admission policy, and that Harvard's pursuit of a diverse student body central to its education mission is lawful. We agree there, and very, very gratifying, and provided a clear path to resolve the path forward. Forward to resolve this important case, he said, and in a closely watched case, it's likely to ripple across the country. The judge there, Allison Burrow, ruled that while Harvard could improve its admission practices with more training and money, it's very fine, legally sound, and uses race only in a narrow way. Throughout this trial and after careful review, all exhibits and written submissions, there's no evidence that any racial animus, of any racial animus whatsoever, or intentional discrimination on the part of Harvard and beyond its use of a race-conscious admissions policy. Nor is there any evidence that any particular admission decision negatively affect Asian American identity. She was in a 130-page ruling. We'll have to get that ruling and read a little bit of it. The ruling came shortly a year after the trial that pitted Harvard against Students for Fair Admission. Burr said the plaintiffs did not present, and this is very unusual here, did not present a single admissions file that reflected discriminatory animus, or even an application of an Asian American who it contends it should have or would have been admitted, absence an unfairly deflated personal ruling. That's very important there. And the group Fairness would say that, well, these people would have been stigmatized. That's their words. Or for that, and then we'll see where this goes. We're still in the Globe here. Oh, this is somebody dismissed from the campaign of Elizabeth Warren. His name was Rick McDaniel, the national organizing director, was dismissed after they hired an outside investigator to look into a matter, inappropriate behavior. Over the past 2 weeks, senior campaign leadership received multiple complaints regarding inappropriate behavior by Rick McDaniel. And this is Kristen Orfman. It said over the same period the campaign retained an outside counsel, conducted an investigation. Based upon the investigation, the campaign determined that it was reported by other campaign staff or by outside the campaign, And it was not with their values. The person for me said there was no report of sexual assault, but declined to speak specifically to the case. She was in Los Angeles. It's really hard for someone to come forward with a complaint or with a concern. Did that showed incredible courage, and I'm deeply grateful for that. Warren just addressed this, and without so forth and so on there. And J.D. Lee, I'm deeply grateful to them. The outside investigation was conducted by Kate Kimpel, an employment lawyer of KK Advising, whomever the hell they are. And as far as McDaniel, well, they didn't reach him. He won't be heard for some time. I never engaged in any behavior inconsistent with the campaign of my own values. That's what McDaniel said. McDaniel worked for various Democratic campaigns. He worked as strategist for the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2010, focusing on the South, where Clinton posted a huge margin of victory during the primary race. Well, so what? He also worked on other campaigns, I guess primarily in the South, with Doug Jones. McDaniel, who's tweeted photograph shows him with a bullhorn, yeah. In February, tweet, Representative Ariana Presley called him the closer and wished him a happy birthday. Well, anyway, that's from what the Globe had to say here. I thought we'd spend a little bit of time on this. And we won't do the Atlantic now. And some sad news here. Diana Carroll has passed. Diana Carroll, I'm sorry, has passed. She was one of the pioneer African American women on TV. We won't have Oliver Pope. When season 4 of Scandal premiered in 2014, viewers learned that Oliver Pope, played by Kerry Washington, was living under an alias. Her team of gladiators had taken all the new monikers, but Oliver and Julie Baker held a deep significance. Julie Baker's the character Diane Carroll began playing Julie Baker in 1968. She had already become the first African American woman to win a Tony for the musical No Strings, and had starred in several movies, including Porky and Bess. Well, that was a common one there. In her early days at NBC, the Harlem native encountered a stark reminder of her groundbreaking status in 2014's epic PBS Pioneers of Television. Carol recalled ABC's makeup department didn't have makeup for an actress of her complexion. The department only dealt with little American girls or European girls. How could you have a makeup department? You don't have makeup for every skin color in America. Well, they didn't have much of one. Just 2 years earlier, NBC had struggled to find a national sponsor for the star-studded variety show hosted by the crooner, Matt King Cole, who later remarked Madison Avenue is afraid of the dark. Julia defied expectations, landing in the top 10 of the Nielsen ratings, and led to a series of accolades for Carol, who in 1969 became the first African American to win a Golden Globe, the first African American woman to receive an Emmy Award. But the show was controversial amidst racial unrest that followed the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968. Article noted that year noted was for all of its merits as a TV first. The sitcom had grown criticism for not projecting a male head of household image and for showing Judy and her son leading a happy, integrated life amongst the white middle class. However, Julia is presented, and she represented another and more realistic evolution, partially because of circumstances of her existence. As she told a magazine, she had her faults, but Julia is still quite special in that she's bright and she's curious, and I identify very much with Julia. Anyway, that's, yeah. And a role the implication for future generations, she told Ebony magazine, which is no longer in existence there. Black children are going to have a marvelous time now. Their self-image is going to be so much greater. On pioneers of television, Carol recalled in 1968, several years ahead of Norman Lear's socially conscious sitcom. Television shows were a wave of addressing race. It was absolute. Let's stay away. Let's stay away from that. That's too controversial. So we knew that going in, she said, that first you make success, and after you've done that, you make other steps. There's nothing like a young, successful mother on the air. We thought it might be a very good stepping stone. That's sort of like the stratagem of the NAACP moving towards school integration, desegregation, etc. Chose colleges, and it also chose. I'm thinking of the Oklahoma case here. What's his name? McClinton, something like that. Anyway, there's an older man who had went back to school instead of a younger man, and some of the social behind-the-scenes pitfalls, like Eisenhower was saying, well, he wouldn't want an African-American to marry his daughter. Anyway, 9 years later, Carol prepared to take a role of a gorgeous businesswoman in the iconic primetime soap opera Dynasty. She set her sights on a number first. I want to be the first black be on television, she told People magazine. All right. Anyway, it's some of the things that went on here. We'll finish this. This is the Washington Post, incidentally. But nothing happened. Wait a minute, hold on. Carol reached out to Aaron Spelling and suggested one of the producer's colleagues that Dynasty, which had dealt with everything controversially with homosexuality, hot bone issues, had tackled just another everything except racial integration to be the first integrated cast. Anyway, but nothing happened until Barbra Streisand invited Carol to sing a song in the 1983 Gold Globe Award. Knowing Spelling would be there, she dressed the part. After the ceremony, Carol went to a private L.A. club where Spelling and his colleagues were celebrating. Spelling later told People that seeing Carol and he and Dynasty, a co-created Esther Shapiro, looked at each other and said, "Oh my God, she is Dynasty." Anyway, when Carol came on board, she had one mandate from the show writers: don't try to write for who you think I am. Write for a white man who wants to be wealthy and powerful. Anyway, the news, of course, spread there, and she was honored by prominent African American women in entertainment, including Washington. The power and the impact of Diana Carroll is immeasurable. As the first, she escorted the TV drama into the 20th century. Rhimes said there, Shauna Rhimes, her Julia Baker is a queen mother to Oliver Pope's existence. And from Eva DeValier, that Carol's trail blazed trails through the dense forest and eloquently diamonds along the path for the rest of us to follow. Diana Carroll, you taught us so much. That's from Debbie Allen. Remember Debbie Allen, dancer, an early TV person. I thought we'd give that one. Let me just look at our time here, and we are running low on time. Let's see if we can snatch anything else here very, very quickly that perhaps we had forgotten. No. Well, Nate still, I guess we're going to bring Nate back on a Monday. Well, anyway, how could the impeachment affect the Democratic primary? This is a discussion. I will go ahead and do a little bit of it. No, we don't have time to do most of it. This is at the 5:38. Anyway, Sarah Frostinson. She is the political editor. Stories around the allegations that DJ Trump used the power of the presidency to seek dirt on his political rival, Joe Lunchbox Biden, are moving fast. The House has opened up an official impeachment inquiry into the president. There is also going to be an election, in case you've forgotten. And from Nathaniel Rickich, he's an election analyst there. Well, on the 20th of September, when both the day the Wall Street Journal, of course, it's interesting, the Wall Street Journal broke the story about the analyst, Elizabeth Warren, had gained significantly in the Real Clear Politics average, and of course Biden had slipped. Warren is one of the first 2020 candidates to come out in favor of it, was in favor of impeachment. And Perry Beacon, senior writer, I agree with this pretty strongly. I'm afraid we're all going to agree. I don't think of the scandal. Biden himself did nothing wrong. His son Hunter seems to have done nothing wrong. Hunter does seem to be a bit dodgy. Will hurt Biden amongst Democratic voters who have already seriously considered voting him. Basically, everyone in the party is defending him, and I suspect that people who are likely to say this is a problem for him by showing he and his family made money through cronyism. We're already warned Bernie Sanders supporters. Let me move on down here in this. It's very long. Nate Silver himself, he's the editor-in-chief. I think impeachment is pretty clearly good news for Warren, but it's not mutually exclusive with it being good news for Biden. My initial instinct is it could help Biden in some ways because one, Democrats would have to come to his defense and make Trump look like he feared Biden. And it has been discussed that much in the news, which boosts his electability case. My second instinct is that it isn't so helpful for Biden. Well, as usual, old Nate Silver is on the fence and can't decide which side to be on. Maybe he'll eventually snag his pants. It's not much because of this. Why? It's not much because of his vague aroma of electability might suffer. Although maybe there's some of that, but more because it requires a campaign that can be nimble. He's not nimble, and can react on particular news developments in real time. I'm not really sure that campaign is Biden's. They run a very risk-averse strategy so far, and that Hillary Clinton tried to do that. Containment, you can't. It's a pretty decent. Oh, wait a minute, hold this minute here. I think Biden is smart enough to learn to lean onto this and basically argue. I am so electable that Trump is already has done that. Is already trying to cheat to beat me. That seems like a good argument to me, particularly in the Democratic primary. That argument is also seems true. It's a pretty decent argument. Another dimension to which of this is if impeachment is in the news all the time. We talked about that a little bit in our introduction. It's bad news for any candidate who isn't one of the front runners now, since the story occupies a lot of media bandwidth that could be spent on Cory Booker said, well, Cory Booker needs more than that. In general, I think fast-moving events favor Warren, just because his strategy runs to the left and easy to execute, and Biden figure out where the middle of the electorate is a bit harder. And that bores out the crosstabs of a poll. Democrats see 60 5% did not that Biden probably did not appropriately press Ukraine. But as I said above, it's not about Democrats leaving Biden because they believe the allegations. It is about them getting scared that he's now in a scandal. We talked about that before, parallels with Hiroshimaana Clinton. However, unsubstantiated, they could hurt him in general elections. So then they choose, this is Perry here instead. Does that seem likely to you? Nate Silver, yeah, I'm with Perry on this one. I think voters aren't taking the electability quite as literally as you and I might. Nate, I agree with the ordinary voter may not spend a lot of time diving into the candidate's average on the performance about the partisan lean or whatever. But I think simpler concepts like scandal hurts your chances of winning could resonate. This may be one of the lessons many people took from 2016. Well, she was a flawed candidate from day one there. The email server, speaking for money, various things were happening there. Do you think that the outside, I fully expect a scrutiny cycle for Warren coming up? Well, he already had that. Remember the chants, and very similar to the Atlanta team. I think that outside purview of this chat, I mean, in some ways you think that Biden could gain ground by saying, while all of these other Democrats are out there talking about impeachment, I am talking about how we can beat Trump based on issues that matter to the middle class. Silver, at best, Democratic voters focus increase now that all the party leaders and candidates back. Well, there's not any evidence of that. And we'll see. We won't get into what her poll said it didn't say. But calling on Twitter to kick Trump off, though he is apart from the journalistic case against kicking Trump off Twitter, sort of draft strategically sense. Trump probably hurts himself politically, maybe even legally, but with his various outbursts on Twitter, you also hear Harris calling for Brett Kavanaugh investigating. Well, Brett Kavanaugh is kind of dead news, but that does resonate with some people. She needs to resonate with somebody. If Harris is an indication, I don't think it's going to be very easy for any of the other low-profile candidates. Old Nate Silver gets his dig in to latch on to a good argument about impeachment. Given the support for impeachment so high amongst Democrats, do you think any candidate have anything to lose by saying to support it? Well, no. Doesn't really matter. I mean, if everybody is in favor of it, maybe it's a weird thing. It looks good for someone like Andrew Yang because he's the most unconventional candidate and can counter program the most. This is Nate Silver. It's not like he's relying much on traditional media attention. No doubt. If you're airing something alongside the Super Bowl, you don't want to be showing a college football game. You want to be really, really different. Let's see. I guess one way it could be bad for Warren if it makes the debate less policy driven. Well, no doubt about that. I'm not sure Warren is benefiting from her policy positions as much as being branded the policy candidate. And a trademark there. Oh, maybe she got the trademark. After El Paso shooting, Beto O'Rourke was in the news a lot, but his numbers didn't move, and it tells me that he's still very unlikely to break through. Well, you never know. In an election, I don't want to call this an oddball contest, but it is. Hard to say there, period, what's happened. They even mentioned Buttigieg here. This is an example of how Washington is broken and we need new faces. Well, new fresh faces there, but are you going to get them? Probably not. And to finish this up, lots of what we're seeing in the polls right now is Warren is gaining from Harris, Sanders, and to some extent from Biden. So I think the biggest shift for Warren, as Nate was hinting at, is not her stance on impeachment, but she is now doing well than her rivals with attacking her more and more in the media with increasing scrutiny of her. Perhaps this is the kind of atmosphere in which the primary is shook up a bit. Warren has already won the college-educated Hillary Clinton voters. No doubt about that mini primary over Harris. Harris, in my opinion, never really had that particular situation. There were some Clinton people in her campaign were hoping to mine her up, but she got marred up, and seeing the Booker was there, and there's too many other people in the space. It is a way ways have won the popular mini primary over populist mini primary over Sanders, but what happens next is unclear. And this is the point that basically that we're making at this mic. There is a lot of uncertainty there. What if Joe Biden is kicked out? Our model, one of our models, I think I've talked about this a little bit, not much. It looked towards, well, maybe Joe Biden goes south, and if Joe Biden goes south, what about DJ Trump? Will either Biden or DJ Trump be around for the bell to ring next year? Well, you never know. I mean, this is one of the big problems here. Not that we're predicting impeachment's going to take DJ Trump out. No, it won't. But could there be some unexpected situation come? One of the problems, remember, Trump has been in this contest with the intelligence community, and I use that as a broad uppercase situation there. And there's many organizations there, not only NSA, CIA, but many you've never heard of. And those people have very long memories there, and they're leftovers, and they're people that have since retired, that people are now there, have allegiances to them, etc. And they monitor phone calls, they monitor all kinds of things. They even, no doubt, probably monitor Secret Service tapes of events. There's video out there, there's audio. President could be standing there talking to somebody in real time, not talking about on the phone, and that gets recorded. And what if something happens that one of those recordings mysteriously take a Snowden moment and somebody smuggles it out in in some type of form there, and it gets mysteriously sent to the Washington Post, the New York Times, or whomever, or the WikiLeaks, and then it's authenticated, and then the thing falls down. That is not like the Access Hollywood tape. That was a video there. It's a little different. We're talking about something in the intelligence field, something that would blow up something and change the circumstances. Nonetheless, that'll do it for us. Have a good weekend, everyone. And we'll see you on the Monday Morning Quarterback on the Boston Red, our political channel. And we'll see you on the Numbers Man Show, which is our economic or macroeconomics program this weekend. And then those special programs that we're working on, particularly the one out of Dallas, including the murder of Mr. Jean, and where that goes, and with the rest of the murders. And incidentally, a Georgia state copper was acquitted of manslaughter in Georgia. I believe the person who murdered that was named Green. But then they're looking at, did he do his oath there? I think he was convicted. Anyway, we'll have more on that in the Monday Morning Quarterback. Good day.